What's up, guys? So we got a question today from Jimbo, who said, "Can you go into more of the technology you used and OPSEC precautions you took?" I can, but that's a really, really massive question. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, as you know, as I'm sure you'd expect. It's not something that I could just answer in one of these short videos. And like, I think there's a lot of really solid questions out there that people have asked me that fall into this category of like just it's a massive question. It's like me asking you what's the purpose of life. I mean, it's pretty big. So with that said, I didn't want to just ignore your question. So with that said, I have started production on a pretty massive documentary that I'm producing and creating, and that's its kind of whole point is to address every question that I could think of, and it's like the question, those big good questions that are really hard to answer, like your question, are the questions that I want to put in there. Those keys to OPSEC, the kind of, some of the examples of the fails, which like the fails, I can cover in a video. That's really not a big thing because there's so many of them, but good OPSEC, like how do you go about doing it? How do you start it? How do you research it? How do you find that path and go down it is a massive, massive undertaking. It's one that I can give you a definitive timeline. It took me 6 months to map out like my operational security, my information security, and create policies from it. So it's definitely not a question that can just simply be answered in a 5 or a 10 minute quick segment on YouTube. It's something that is going to take considerable amount of backstory to tell. And I think one of the other lessons that we can look at, not just from the point of view of being darknet buyers or darknet vendors, is looking at and being spectators. Like you don't have to be a darknet vendor or a darknet buyer to find this kind of stuff interesting, because it's like at the end of the day, what we're discussing, even the guy who's studying business or economics, has weight in this, because at the end of the day, these topics we're talking about conducting a business in a super hostile environment, and it's interesting because it's like you have all these kind of weird, paradoxes where it's like, how do you build a trusted name in an anonymous environment? And you would think like you can't, I would think I can't, you know what I mean? Until you actually see it done, or you're put into a position where you do it, and I think that's the really cool thing about looking at these kind of topics and having these kind of discussions, is because that's the information that comes to light. But to answer your question, it's a massive question, and it's something that I do want to answer, but it's something that I'm not going to be able to answer in a short video like this. And it's something that I think definitely deserves to be answered. And like I said, I've already probably put in close to 50 to 80 hours into this documentary, and I look forward to producing it. And like, there's no post-production team that I have. Like, I don't have an editor. I don't have any of that. Like a lot of the stuff, like a little while back, I put up a video like asking about my audio. Like, hey, what do you guys think of this audio? Because I know my audio been getting rougher and rougher. And like, at the end of the day, the reason for it getting rougher and rougher was because I'm half deaf and I have no post-production team. But like I was trying to figure out like, why is it, it was off. And I was like, why is it off? And I kept modifying it and doing things to it, and it kept making it worse and worse. And I kept digging this hole, going deeper and deeper, until finally, like, I just scrapped everything I was doing and I went back to the basics. And that's when I put that video out there, and everyone was like, oh, like, it sounds so much better, and like it's a side topic that I'm discussing, but as a side issue, like, I'm getting a new mic, so I'm really excited about that. Should be, a lot higher quality than this this crappy ass, $20 mic. But like that question will be answered, but it will be answered in extreme detail. Like that documentary, when it's done, is probably going to be 2 or 3 hours. But it's just like, it's not going to be like these where it's just like a free flowing kind of dialogue between us. It's going to be like a jam packed, knowledge. Just that's what I look to do. I look to just kind of like take a hammer and pound knowledge into your head for like 2.5, 3 hours or whatever, however long it is. Like my goal is to convey all of that knowledge, all of those ideas, into one video and kind of put it out there, and let people, check it out and absorb it like that. And it's going to have a ridiculous breakdown as best as I can do by myself of the entire history, of the darknet and every market. And I don't know yet, but possibly, select vendors. I was thinking about doing all the vendors that I could find cases for, but it's really not practical at the end of the day. But I definitely look forward to putting that out. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't answer your question in more detail, but it's a big question. But thank you for writing it, and just know that it will be answered. It will just be in the future. So thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this content, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet. Have a good day.